Hello, everyone, and welcome to the last Talk About It Tuesday of 2021. I'm Tosca De Matteo, founder of Tosca Coaching and Consulting, and I'm super excited to have you here today to speak with Monica Kline, and we're going to talk about using mindset practices to overcome a lack mentality. What a perfect time for this, especially as we're going into holidays for many of us and going into the new year and wanting to have like our heads screwed on right. You know what I mean? So I'm excited for you to meet Monica. She's an author of the book Behind the Grit. She's an entrepreneur. She's an advocate for women. She's a speaker. She's a single mom and founder of Identity Brand by Monica Kline. She is a powerhouse and a force in the world, and she's really here to serve a higher calling, which we're going to talk to her about. So just waiting for her to step into the room. And actually today is also the winter solstice, so we are now moving towards longer days, more light, which is always kind of funny to me because I feel like this is when winter is like, it makes me think that we're getting darker and darker, but no, we're actually getting lighter and lighter. So that's exciting. And yeah, I'm going to take the next couple weeks off of Talk About It Tuesday, just so you know, but I will be back starting January 11th, right? Yep, the 11th. It will be our first one of the year. And so feel free to go in and play the replays. But yeah, I'm stoked to have this conversation and talk about like how we can use the power of our minds, because our minds are so powerful, to help us get in the right place. And here you are. I'm just talking and chatting it up here. Yeah, let's bring you on, my friends. Let's see. Did it work? All right, hold on. Let me. There you go. Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Okay, let me turn this. Sorry. You know, whenever you get back on and you're like, I haven't been on here in a while. I took a little break because there was just so much going on and I needed a little digital detox is what they call it, right?
Yeah.
How are you? You look fantastic.
Oh, thank you. I'm good. I'm excited that like things are kind of slowing down a little bit. You know what I mean? Like the emails are like, fewer and fewer, which is great.
I know. This end of the year can go one of two directions, right? It's like super fast pace, craziness, and then it's like,
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
Can you hear me okay? I didn't put my headset in today.
No, I can. Actually, I just put my headset in because I was like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not in headset. Yeah, so I had just, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to do this, and come on this platform. I'm excited for my audience to meet you and to have this conversation around mindset, to overcome lack mentality, especially this time of year. I think, we got to get our mind screwed on tight, and actually, I was just talking to another entrepreneur yesterday, and I think it's tough when you say, like, you look at December and you look at your numbers for the year, and that can really, really throw you. Just as one example. But before we dive into it, I would love to hand it over to you to introduce yourself, to share with the audience, like, what made you, like your upbringing, your experiences, and like, who is Monica Kline, and what brings you here today?
How long do we got?
We got an hour. We got time for this. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, first, let me just say, whenever I'm wearing this in my hair, that means I mean business. This is like my top knot. People know, oh, she's like in massive serious mode. Usually I'm like loose and beachy and Beachy, not bitchy, not the other way.
Yes, I love beachy, but it's all right to be a little bitchy sometimes.
Absolutely, right? Let's see.
Yeah.
I got my start in, born and raised in Southern California, worked in corporate America for quite some time until I realized it really wasn't my cup of tea. I'm like, this is nice, but having to check in with people and get permission as an adult just wasn't working for me. And then fast forward career-wise, I did work for a boutique company where I had some of the freedom, but I still wasn't fulfilled. And I knew, I was one of those people that knew that there was so much more out there. And so that's about when I made the move from Southern California to New York City, because, if you're going to do anything, you better go to New York and do it. And I just always had this like passion and fuel whenever I was in New York. And so I made the move. I opened my business, and I have a full service branding agency. So I started, very small, baby steps, offering one service. And now I offer literally the full omni-channel. So it's been a crazy ride. It's been exciting. It's been scary. It's been bumpy. And throughout all of this, which I know we're going to jump into that shortly, what has kept me afloat on some days or soaring on others is my mindset. And going through all of this, growing up in a multicultural household with lots of different narratives as to what you should do. I'm 51. So as I reflect, it wasn't cool to be brown skin and focus on building a business. It was, you get married, you have babies, you are a homemaker. And ever since I was probably 7 years old, that was not going to be my narrative. I respected it. Obviously, I have a grown son, and I was a single mom. And so again, there's another set of messages that goes with that people, they like to label you and put you in boxes. Oh, you're a single mom. You'll never really achieve all of that. I'm like, really? Watch me. So I've always had that, I don't want to say proving myself, but I've always pushed myself really hard. And it comes with great work ethic, discipline. I think discipline is the number one thing that I would really hone in on as an entrepreneur. If you don't have that discipline in anything you do in life, you're not going to see the success that you are dreaming of. So, from being young, being told that I would be a wife and a mother, which is fantastic, but it just wasn't the path that was laid out in front of me. So I kind of flipped it, and I did everything backwards. So I got married, had my son very, very young. I say very young, but now I reflect and I'm like, okay, I'm glad I did it this way. And then finished my education, jumped into corporate, built my career. My son, was always provided for, always cared for. My son was about 2 years old when his father decided that it was just too much of a responsibility. And so he exited the picture. So here I am. Thankfully, my parents, my mom and dad, were there for everything with raising my child, but really going for it, but having to kind of play it safe because I knew I had all this responsibility solely of caring for him and his future. So happy to say he's a very well-balanced, adjusted young man. Pursuing his passions, doing extremely well. But, that all comes from what you instill in the foundation. And foundation goes back to your mindset. Like, what are your beliefs? What are your limiting beliefs? What are your daily routines that you implement in your life? And is it just in a season, or is it something that you build upon year after year? Because that's where you see success in anything in life, whether it's fitness or your mind or your business or relation, anything, you need to build on that. So that's like lays the picture for where I am today, which it's a little dreary here today. Otherwise I'd flip the camera, but usually it's beautiful blue skies. So as of last week, I'm back home in Orange County, California. This pandemic, I feel, has really displaced a lot of us. And I came out here because my dad suddenly tragically passed away. And this was after losing my mom. So I was just coming to help him. And when that happened, you know, anybody that is listening and you're in our age range, if you have elderly parents, it doesn't matter if they're healthy or not, take care of the little things. Take care of not only the legal documents, the paperwork, but take care of like the household things, because it is a task to go through, unpack. What do you keep? The emotional part of it is taxing. So I've been doing that process for about 15 months since my dad passed. And now I'm wrapped up. So I decided before the new year to start my next chapter in my life, and I moved back to my hometown. And yeah, I've been here less than a week and it's been eye-opening. I feel like my life has come full circle because I'm a completely changed woman than who I was when I left almost 10 years ago. So it's very interesting. I intend to come back home to New York, but I think right now I'll save that for another conversation. I just feel like it's a little too volatile with all going on right now.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much for, yeah, sharing the winding path. And there's just so much in there even that I'm like want to dig into. And I guess the thing that's like coming up first for me is what you're just sharing, right, around like this full circle and coming home, because I think that I'm curious what your mindset is and was about coming home. Like, is it like a win? Is it like a regression? Is it like moving forward, moving backward, right? Because I can imagine, like, depending on your situation, it could be any one of the above, and any one of the above could serve you or not serve you. So, like, what is that just in this moment of time of this full circle back in your hometown? Like, what is that like for you?
It's everything that you just said. It is a roller coaster, if you will, and I struggled. I mean, I live in a beautiful, desirable part of the country. You know, I'm in Newport Beach, California. Like, people want a vacation here. People look around in awe, and I love it. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. It has everything that, you know, everything to offer. But when I left, I'm a city girl. I love the city. There's no other city like New York. I love the diversity, the culture, the 24 hours I can do anything I want between the restaurants and the museum and the art scene. And it's such a different culture. And so I'm slowly going to immerse myself back into the things that really brought me joy and where my mindset was the absolute best before I moved. Of course, you know, there's ebb and flow with life, with anything we do, wherever we're located. So I am here really redefining what this next chapter looks like. And as I previously mentioned, I feel like I did things backwards because, you know, I had my son, I got married, got divorced, got remarried, got divorced a second time. And my parents were always a very big part of my life. So I think the part where I struggle with is I am back here in California and my parents aren't here. You know, I moved to New York with their blessing. Not that I needed it, but I wanted it. And they always said, you can do anything you want. You just have to put your mind to it and you have to go all in. Don't ever half-ass anything you're going to do. And there's some days where I'm like, you know, I feel time is such a luxury where I'm like, if I had more time, I can do that. So I'm really being very thoughtful on what I choose to do here, how I re-immerse myself back into this lifestyle, because it is very different. And I love being by the water. So being here, I'm like, I have to be able to live where I can see the water, see the ocean. And that was a non-negotiable, because I want morning walks on the beach to journal or meditate, or I want to be able to be outside in January and February on a paddleboard getting my workout in versus, you know, and I think the flip, I could be inside on my Peloton in New York in the snowstorm. I'm like, okay, I can make the best of this. But I think my number one, and I don't want to say regret, but because New York has been such an amazing chapter of my life, it's been almost 10 years. And I'm like, I've done so much. I've learned so much. I've fallen so much, but I've gotten back up and I've learned from those lessons. So my number one thing here right now I'm struggling with and trying to figure out why I'm feeling this way is I'm here without my parents. You know, I left when I could have had those precious moments while they were still alive. We don't know what tomorrow holds. And so I'm working through that. I'm open to maybe seeking some grieving counseling, which I didn't think I would. But now that I've lost both my parents in such a short amount of time, you know, it's part of life.
Yeah.
So that would be my struggle. Other than that, I am learning to embrace it. So.
Well, thank you for sharing just the transparency and the truth of that, right? Because I think that it's important to honor like all the things, right? It's rarely is a situation one dimensional and it's just all bliss and it's all like, you know, and it's grief and it's joy and it's also like figuring out like how you want to be and who you want to be in this place that holds so many memories is kind of what I'm hearing from being, you know, kind of, yeah, like what mindset do you want to like take on?
Yeah.
Especially when maybe, you know, mindsets that aren't serve you creep in from time to time.
You have to be so aware of, you know, it sounds cumbersome, but you do have to be so aware of every thought that you're processing and how that comes out in what actions. And it's, it can be hard on certain days. You know, I arrived here and my lovely movers made a little oops. And so I have the items from my parents that I wanted to keep or I still don't know what to do with. So they're kind of in limbo or I just haven't had the emotional power to go through them. So it's not a lot. It's probably like 40 big boxes still, but that's condensed from what it was. And the movers, when I moved back to Newport, they mislabeled the boxes. And so my parents' boxes ended up here and my belongings, specifically my kitchen, ended up in storage. So I got a storage unit to put all my parents' stuff. And I said, you know what, maybe one Sunday a month, I'm going to go spend the day there and slowly go through and figure out, okay, what am I going to keep and ship back to New York? And I knew like you have to mentally prepare yourself because you don't know if there's going to be happiness, joy, sadness. What are you going to find? And, you know, my parents were amazing people, but there's still, I mean, there's things that my dad kept everything. My dad was a historian, so he kept everything, but it's a process to go through it. And I've done 99% of it all by myself. So it's been an emotional journey. And this past week getting here, and then, you know, I'm recovering from COVID, so I don't have the energy. So I hired somebody to come in and unpack. I'm like, yes, boxes are in the right room. Go and get the office set up and then get to my bedroom and my closet and let's get this place unpacked. So I literally was just saying everything as she was unpacking and I'd pop in and I'm like, wait a minute. And she was pulling everything. I'm like, no, no, no. So the emotions flooded back. So I had to sit down and for a few hours, cancel what I was doing and strictly work on my mindset because my emotions were getting the best in me. And I could have gone down that rabbit hole. And at that point, we're coming up on year end. It's the holidays. I'm still recovering. I know any kind of emotional trauma is going to weaken my immune system and we're not going back down that road. So it was mindset, mindset, mindset. So I had to really sit with myself and work, journal, reframe what this meant. What was the lesson in it? Where was it a message my parents needed me to hear on being back? Maybe it was their approval, their blessing, whatever it was. So I'm still waiting for them to switch out the boxes a week later. But, you know, I ran to Target and bought the basics, a coffee maker, a toaster, and like the things that I needed, the spatula just to get by to like use my kitchen. But little things like that, if your mindset isn't right, they can completely derail you and set you down a negative path. And I'm like, okay, it happens. What am I going to do? But my mindset practices are like very solid. And it's not something I've adopted recently. I have been practicing mindset ever since I was a little girl. my mom struggled with a lot of anxiety. She had social anxiety disorder. And if you can't tell, but normally I'm like extremely outgoing. I'm very social. I have pulled back on that since becoming an entrepreneur, just because I don't have the time. I'm 1,000,000% dedicated, married, in love with my business. So that she gets all of my time. And I always worry. I'm like, okay, my mom developed some of these, sad later in life. And I'm like, oh my gosh, am I starting to feel that way? I'm like, no, I'm just a busy entrepreneur. So I focus on my mindset. And when my mom was first diagnosed with cancer, one of the things, and she made me a cassette tape of all of the songs that reminded her of me. And she said, she's like, how did you get to be so optimistic? And optimistic in a reality-based way. And I said, it's all about mindset. And so I went to the drugstore and I bought a spiral-bound notebook and pencils and erasers. And it was like right after her first chemo session. And I said, okay, we're going to draw this out. We're going to visualize it. Once you visualize that the cancer is leaving your body, so we're going to draw it out. It's all in her female organs. We're going to go through and we're going to spec out the cancer. And then we're going to start a meditation, mantras, and we're going to visualize it. And when you go deep into visualization and you're working on your mindset, it works. It's not like woo-woo stuff, but like it literally, your thoughts become reality. And so we would erase with a big eraser all the cancer in that notebook. And I still have this notebook. 2 years in, she was in remission. The cancer was gone. And unfortunately, it came back a couple years later, which is when that was the end of it. It was too bad. It spread everywhere. But we were able to do it. And this is the mindset practices that I was teaching my mom going through, something that was really horrible. And my son, I've raised him to have that. And whenever I see him start to go down a slide a little bit, I'm like, no. And we had this conversation last night. And I said, this is perfect timing because I'm talking about this again tomorrow. I'm such a proponent of mindset work. I say it's like brushing your teeth. If you eat more sugar or sweets or anything during the course of the day, I hope you're going to brush your teeth more frequently. I mean, I hope you're brushing your teeth in the morning and at night, but after lunch or a meal, I'm the person that carries a toothbrush in her purse, but you need to take care of your oral hygiene the same way you need to take care of your mental hygiene. And a lot of people are talking about it, but I'm not seeing enough, specifically women, implementing. And what do you do? Is it 10 minutes every day? Whatever you can, carve it out. I promise it makes drastic changes in your life. And like I shared earlier with anything, you keep layering that. And before you know it, I don't ever want to refer to anyone as like a Pollyanna, that you're just eternally optimistic and there's never any bad, because there is. But that is when you need to practice your mindset even more. And I'll give you a couple of quick examples. When I had COVID, I got really sick and haven't been sick, haven't even had a cold in almost 7 years. And so for me, I was like, am I being a baby or is this really bad? Well, when I collapsed because of the fever and I was dehydrated, I couldn't keep enough fluid in me. I collapsed twice, I fainted twice, and I woke up to the paramedics in the ambulance and getting wheeled into the hospital. The cold corridors of that hospital shook me. And it took me right back to the moment that my dad was passing away in the hospital. And I'm looking, and I am now in the COVID area. And I'm like, how is this humanly possible? I'm healthy. I've done everything right. I've listened. I've isolated. I've done everything. I'm like, how am I in the hospital in the COVID wing? So I sat up. They were testing my lungs and doing all this stuff. And I sat up. I had on my pajamas. I'll never forget, because I had just woken up. And I started to visualize. And the doctors were doing all the testing. And I just closed my eyes. I completely went into a deep meditation and mindset work. And I visualized myself walking up, getting out of that gurney, walking out of that hospital. And I gave myself a time limit. I always put times on things. And when I'm doing mindset work, I said, okay, in the next 2 to 4 hours, I will be walking out of here. And at that point, my stomach started to rumble. And just for fun, I said, I would really like a turkey sandwich. Like a turkey sandwich and some orange juice, because I hadn't really been eating. And I think it was about 3.5 hours later, they released me. And they brought me a box lunch. And they said, here. I literally made the phone call and I said, pick me up. I'm outside the emergency room. They're like, how did you get released? And where, like, we don't have to come in and get you. I'm like, no, I walked myself out and I was eating a sandwich. So, but visualization is so important for mindset work. And, you know, I have a complimentary 30-minute video on how to even start a basic mindset routine daily. And we take it in baby steps. And, you know, I have a playlist on my Alexa. I won't say it because she'll start it. And it's all the songs that have very positive energy or positive words. I'm also big into listening to sound frequencies, because that really raises the level of your mindset, your energy. And so I start every single morning with sound therapy. And that could lead into journaling or visualization or just dancing. I mean, like just moving your body or doing something active. And then I go into positive, something that really fills me. I want positivity, whether it's an audio book or a YouTube video. I am like deeply in love with Les Brown. I think he's like the original, you know, success motivator, inspirational. So I listen to a lot of like really old Les Brown from like probably the early 80s. And his new stuff is fantastic too. But I'm like, let's scroll back to 1982. So I love listening to him. So usually my routine then starts in the bathroom, in the shower. And I'll be listening, and I have it super loud in there with the speaker so I can hear it. And then, you know, the end of your shower, I end it with that super stark cold water, because that is invigorating, but it turns on those brain cells for the hit of dopamine that your brain needs to give you that positivity. And those are like such simple things that everyone can start their morning with. So sound therapy, cold water, and then open with, even if it's 10 minutes of while you're brushing your teeth, while you're combing your hair, whatever your morning ritual is, if it's a man, if you're shaving, whatever you do in the bathroom, set your iPad in there, set your phone in there. I have stands that I can just pop my phone or my iPad into. I'm in the bathroom, so it doesn't fall or break or get wet. And I just pop it into the stand and I hit play. And that's my morning where I start. I go much deeper after that, but there's so many easy things. Mindset shapes your life. It really does. And you're in New York currently. You're in Brooklyn, right? So
Yeah.
I hear there's a massive outbreak going on.
Yeah.
You're good? You're healthy?
Yeah, I'm good.
Good. Every single person I know in my circle has it.
Oh,
Minus my son. So my clients all have it. My son's girlfriend has it. My son gave me a count yesterday. On Saturday, 25 of their coworkers and their friends, between he and his girlfriend, all tested positive. And they couldn't even get a proper test because they were running out at all the testing sites.
Right.
And I mean, his girlfriend called me and she's like, I'm 2.5 hours in line and people are being turned away because they ran out of tests. So there's plenty of tests in California. So I went to the drugstore, I bought 40 test kits, and I FedExed overnighted to them so they can keep testing. So unfortunately, most of them all tested positive. So yesterday I had to extract my son from his house because literally his entire building is sick. 2 of my clients there called me. They're like, we're canceling meetings for the rest of the week, our year-end meetings, because we're in bed with our families. Like literally, we've counted as of last night 41 people that personally, like the personal, like phone call, text message, are sick. And my son started to get really sad and upset. And so I said, you know what? Don't even go to the apartment. I said, run down the street, wear your mask, of course, be safe, go buy 5 t-shirts, 5 outfits, whatever you need. I just checked you in to a hotel for the week, get your art supplies, and just go check in. So he is unfortunately spending Christmas at a hotel by himself because he can't fly because he has to quarantine. Mindset work on this, like, I want to cry because it's like it just happened yesterday. I had to keep myself a step above in the midst of my busy week closing out the year, client calls, staff calls. I'm going into like my busiest week of the year, but keeping his mindset, because who's leaning on him? His girlfriend, his friends. And if his mindset isn't right, it's a domino effect. And so we had a pretty long discussion last night about this. So he's in his hotel room with all of his art supplies. He can't go to work either. Right. And unfortunately, he's spending Christmas by himself. And I'm like, this isn't the way after last year, what we wanted. But what are we going to do? We're living in different times. And especially during these times, we have to be so cognizant of what we're telling ourselves. And going back to when I got COVID, I was extremely burnt out. I was tired. I was emotionally drained because I had been going through the brunt of the last of my parents' things. And I let the emotions just really take over me to push through that. And I was burning the candle at both ends with clients, knowing that, year end was approaching. And I stopped self-caring. I stopped doing my daily rituals. I stopped literally everything. I stopped eating healthy. I stopped working out. I didn't do this for a long period, but it was enough to wear my immune system down to where I caught it. And everything that I said I wouldn't do, I did in that small period. And that was my wake-up call. I'm like, don't stop self-caring. Self-caring starts up here, and then it funnels through everything else in your body. So that is why, like, people probably sometimes don't want to talk to me because I'm like, how's your mindset today? I'm always checking in on mental health. I don't ask how you are, what you're doing. I always ask, how's your mental health and are you healthy? Like, those are my top 2 questions. And I have a chain of like my son and his friends, and I will send a group text. I'm like, everybody, give me your mental health status, because we need to be more aware of that, especially in these times. Every day, but especially during these times. I want to say this without it sounding bad, but I wish during the times that I was going through the loss of my father, there was only 2 people that checked in on me about how my mental health was, because they hear it, they hear me say it all the time. And one was my son as well. And I'm like, more people need to be aware, people trying to make plans to go out to dinner or go meet for a drink. And I'm like grieving something tragic. The last thing I want to do is go sit in a restaurant. Ask how my mental health is. That would make me feel like, somebody cares. But people don't know. People really don't know. So proceed with, checking in on how people are doing up here, because that is where it starts. I feel like I've talked this whole time.
Oh my God. It's been beautiful. It's just so much like wisdom, and just helpful just to hear your journey, and just to hear the depth of it, and what you've done in difficult times to not only get yourself through, but to get people through that you love. And even what you were sharing on the grief, and like what you wish people would do, like somebody that I know like just lost their husband, and I'm like, and I'm the kind of person that will reach out. Like I won't ignore it, but then I'm just like, I didn't know what else to say other than sending you all my love. Like I didn't even, because it's so recent too, that I'm like, doesn't even make sense to ask a question, in my opinion, because what is there to say, but I think that, so it's just helpful to hear. I think that this kind of thing, which is like how do we support each other? How do we help each other with our mental health, whatever we're going through? How do we just even label it and honor it and just say,
Yeah.
hey, I know this isn't all like, roses and cupcakes right now,
Yeah, it's life is still going to happen. There's just all of these added stresses around us. And I relate. I have, unfortunately, two girlfriends my age who both just lost their partners or spouses in the last couple of months. So watching them go through this and being still so young and vibrant, it's difficult and it's part of life. But how do we push through? How do we push through and learn from what is going on? And I think this is where, my mindset, and I'm so passionate about it. And I have been for all of my life. It's not just something that's hip and cool. I'm like, oh, let me jump on that. And people that know me will say, yeah, she's really and the back up again. There was a couple years where I threw all caution to the wind and I made some very poor choices in my life. And I paid heavily for those choices because I allowed somebody else's ways to penetrate my beliefs. And he was able to I allowed him to derail me. And it started with my mindset. It started with him instilling a lot of self-doubt, limiting beliefs in me. And then that carried into an abusive situation that carried and escalated to a lot more crap. To get myself out of that was a fight of my life. I literally did not know if I would get out of it, if I would overcome it. I didn't even know if I still had it in me to want to fight for it. And one day, it was the day after my mom's funeral, I said, you know what? I have it. I am fighting like hell. And I did. That day totally changed the trajectory of going back to not only who I used to be, but the new and improved version, if you will. And that day forward, I said, never will I abandon my mindset practices. And even like I said, last week with like the box mishap, I'm like, what are you going to do? Really, it's an honest mistake. What are you going to do?
Right.
But going through that phase of who I was married to, going through that phase, I don't regret it because it made me much stronger. And it reminded me of how important and how mindset has to be a part of your everyday. For me, there's just no question about it. It has to be something I do every day. And like I said, I go deeper into that. So I'm in the midst of writing a book on all about mindset and what I do. It's not about what everybody else out there is, practicing or whatnot. It's what I did to walk myself through each circumstance. And I go into deep detail. So it's a little graphic at times, but I go into deep detail as to how I got out of scenarios by managing my thoughts. And then from that will come a larger course all on mindset for people that want to dive deeper into it. And like I said, I have a complimentary 30-minute mindset, set up your routines. I have downloadable worksheets in there to keep you on track for the first 30 days, just as accountability. And if people aren't focused on it every single day, areas of your life are going to stop working the way you envision it to work, or life is going to hurt, or you're going to feel like you're struggling or battling. It's an uphill, and it shouldn't feel like that. Those are the moments in life that, of course, things are going to get thrown at us, but we can push through it faster. And we have to be able to walk through each circumstance to get to that other side. There's no shortcuts. We can't go above, around. We have to go through it. And there was somebody I was speaking to recently about the scenario, the painful portion of my life. And they very innocently said, why don't you just get up and walk out? It's not that simple. And to kind of put shame on somebody for that scenario, it can be debilitating for somebody that doesn't know, like, why didn't I do that? Am I stupid? But no, you have to be calculated when you're in a dangerous situation. So If it wasn't for my mindset and knowing how to put like a strategy into place, was I able to get out of that situation? But, mindset, and then it comes into strategy. What's your strategy for your mindset? What is it for your personal life? What is it for your family? What is it for your business? It funnels into every area.
And what I love about how you talk about this is it's multidimensional, right? It's not like, here's a mantra, go say that to yourself all day long. And I'm also not hearing it as like this toxic positivity, right? Like as like you keep saying, right, you go deeper than even these practices that you're talking about. And I know that, we've talked about this just in prep, right? Which is like that this isn't a catch-all, right? That you talk about practices that go alongside it, whether it's,
Yes.
your healthcare and your things like that. But what I love about what you're sharing is like that we get off track, like we get off track, and that's okay. And you have tools that you come back to,
Yes.
Um, and I think we could just get into this, like, beat ourselves up over like getting off track, and even when you talked about like with your mother and using these practices, because I think sometimes, well, I guess my question is, how do you balance moving through the difficult emotions with, right, the even coming back to neutral, or getting to a higher vibration place, like because I feel like there's a time and a place to be sad and to honor that, and there's a time and a place for what, really being strategic and being intentional with what mindset you're carrying around with you every day.
That's a good point, because this is something that with the loss of my mom, I didn't know what up from down, even though we knew, when somebody has cancer and when it comes to end of life, and just watching the demise, I was very traumatized by her death. I knew it was coming, but once it happened, I couldn't function. It was very difficult to pull myself from what I was experiencing, from grief to anger to just every emotion, and slowly watching the demise of the person closest to you. It's a horrible, horrible thing. It took me about 2 years to even be able to find a little bit of joy in life again. And I go back and I ask myself, I'm like, did I purposely torture myself for a longer period? Celebrating and honoring her life and whatnot. And until I found little pieces of joy, did I start to remember, this isn't how my mom wanted me to live my life after she was gone. So I started to re-engage with things that brought me joy and happiness, and really filtering through my relationships and how I was spending my time. And so I got very laser focused on things that made me happy. So I did that, and that really worked. And then my creativity just like blossomed again. So I'm like, okay. So I possibly, I didn't know how to grieve. I didn't know what grieving was. I thought grieving had a timeline. And I thought, oh, in 1 year, I'll feel better. And my mom's been gone now for 5 years. It doesn't feel better. It still hurts every day. It doesn't go away. That void is still there. But I've learned different ways to process it. I've learned different ways to honor her memory. And I love talking about her. Or I love trying to recreate one of her recipes, because I ruin it every time. But, it's just like, okay, I'm doing my best, Mom. But, I've learned, and you learn in this journey, and working on that mindset on how, and I get super emotional still, because it's my closest relationship of my entire life. So that I had to figure it out. And that's what we have to do. But I knew I needed to pull myself out of that rut. And that rut was constant 24/7 grieving. And I'm like, the tears, the emotion, the can't get myself out of bed. Like, I was pretty bad. I'm an only child. My mom and I, we had a very tight relationship. So then I said, if anything, it brought my father and I extremely close during that process because he's going through it. They were married for over 50 years. And so we would just spend hours on the phone reminiscing, talking about her. Or when I'd fly out to California and, we'd go to her favorite place for dinner, favorite restaurant for dinner. And we were able to do that together. And so when COVID hit, I was in New York for the majority of the lockdown. And then I just said, you know what, it's time. It's time to go and be close to my dad and enjoy these last moments because I'm in New York. I'm locked in. I might as well go and be locked in with him and take care of him and cook for him and do all of that stuff. So where I'm going with this is the grieving process with my dad has been extremely different, night and day. I never would have gathered. I've been stronger in the process since losing my dad. I'm able to process the grief in different ways. And because it was so sudden and it was extremely tragic, I don't know, it's just affected me different. I've been able to push through, not for sake of, oh shoot, my phone just died.
Oh no, oh, you're there. Okay, we're gonna pause. Thanks all for,
I think
there
my
you
phone
are.
died. No, it's about to.
Ah,
Let
do you need
me
to plug it in?
plug
Do you need to
myself
move?
in.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
for those,
Yep. Let me just plug it in.
for those, and Karen, thank you for, I agree. Like to hear the tools used in context and examples is super helpful. And, for those of you who are on live, if you have any questions you want to ask, by all means, like, take advantage of having Monica here live. And, it's, I can't help but think just as, as she's kind of getting stuff together, that there's grief in so many arenas this time of year. It's not just who's no longer with us, but it's also like what dynamics no longer exist, like and the way that maybe we grew up and then what's available to us now is different. And that's it's grieving that, maybe it's grieving the loss of jobs, or the or grieving certainty, or there's so many things that we're grieving right now. So that what you're sharing, I think, is so helpful, not just in loss of life, but in all the things that we're losing. The loss of just being able to be with people, but yeah, I going back to what you were talking about, I was just kind of filling in some space there. So
I love it. Thank you. I see somebody. Okay, my website, I'll drop it in here as well. It's Identity Brand by Monica Kline .com. And if you go to the top when you land on my website, it says download your mindset moments. I believe, download your mindset moments. Just click on that link and it'll automatically appear in your email. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm trying to catch up on these. I just saw the questions pop up.
Great question. I'm glad we could get that out there. Yeah, and Karen was saying, how helpful it is to hear all the tools in context and with examples.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's getting on a routine, and that's where, after my mom and then after exiting that marriage, I definitely I had more time to focus on what was going to bring me back to feeling like myself and really diving deeper into my mindset practices and working with a lot of mentors and coaches, regardless of, if it was for my business or personal. And that really, I don't want to say it fast tracked the trajectory, but in some essences it did. So when everything happened with my dad, my mind was in a really optimistic place, even though we were living in that crazy quarantine in New York. And then I'm like, California's open. I'm going to go and live with my dad and, take care of him and just see what this next chapter until we're out of the pandemic And then I just felt like I was being tested.
Mm.
And I don't know if I shared this with you, but I'll make it brief and then jump into what I actually did. I think the examples of how you push through any kind of tragedy, any kind of loss, and like you said, Tosca, with the loss of jobs and with loss of, I mean, at this point, we're 2 years into a pandemic where you know somebody who has lost somebody, whether it's through the pandemic or otherwise, or their livelihood, or becoming a homeschool teacher for your children. I mean, you know, so many people with the she-cession have had to leave their jobs and quit to stay home to take care of their family, whether it's their children or their elderly parents or whoever. Like, there's just a lot of, there's a lot of displacement during this. So, and that I do count as loss. You know, somebody who had their identity by getting up every day and taking your children to school and going to an office, and then all of a sudden you don't have that, nor can you even like walk down the street freely. So it's just, there's just so much going on. So these practices truly help whatever you're going through. So at this point, you know, I made the plan to come back to California. I remember I was walking down the street. I was going to the drug or to the Home Depot. I'm like, what's this store? I was getting boxes. I was going to start packing. I'm like, okay, I'm going to leave my stuff here because I do want to come back to New York. My master plan was to convince my dad and bring him back to New York with me, even though I knew he didn't like the cold weather. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go there. I'm going to live with him for a couple months and we'll figure it out. And then I'll slowly get him to come to New York and then we'll be set. Like, I'll have my dad there. My son is there. My business is there. I'm like, we'll be good. I was arriving July 1st and I don't know.
Oh, there you go.
I think, okay. There, okay, yeah, I don't know. It's like it's fading. I think I need a new phone again. I've dropped this phone a few times. So I make the decision to come back to California. My dad had a little bit of a gallbladder symptoms, and so the doctor said before California, rumor has it that they were going to lock down, close the ORs the way New York had. He's like, let's just get him in for that surgery in case we go into a lockdown, because California had not been locked down. The pandemic had not really hit here. So I said, can you just wait one more week so I can be there for recovery? And he's like, no, he's like, it's outpatient. He'll be in and out in about 3 hours. So we made all the arrangements. I said, Dad, I'll be there in a couple days after your surgery. Surgery didn't go well. The surgeon struck an artery and he bled out. And then I just got a call. The doctor just said, how quickly can you get here? And, you know, keep in mind, they had stopped all flights from New York to anywhere. So there is now only 3 flights a week from New York to LA. So fortunately, it was the next day. I'm like, the first flight out is tomorrow. I can't fly today. And I got on that flight and I walked straight into the ICU, and he was on life support at this point. Mindset, that is like where my book opens, is me sitting on the floor, hyperventilating in layers and layers of clothes and masks and face shields and gloves, because I am sitting on the floor dealing with a massive decision to keep my dad on life support or not. And amidst all of this, I couldn't find the legal documents because I had power of attorney and advanced medical directive, and I couldn't find the 1 page of his final wishes. And he and I never spoke about it because we didn't want to. It was after my mom, both of us just said, let's put that in a different compartment. And so I just sit there and put myself in his shoes, and knowing him and falling apart, having anxiety on the floor of a hospital. I'm like, Monica, this isn't who your parents raised you to be. I sat on that floor for about 15 minutes, went through my mindset practices, went from hyperventilating to the respiratory therapist, like saying, I think I need to put you on some oxygen because you're going to pass out the way you're breathing. And I just pulled off everything. I didn't even care. I'm like, I am walking in there as the woman my dad raised me to be, and I'm making these decisions. If I let myself go down that rabbit hole of sadness and grief and, oh my God, my dad is going to die, This is going to be, I'm signing the papers to put the paralytic into, like, it was heavy. I said, I can't do that to myself. This is what my dad would want. And I literally visualized, I prayed, and I got up and I walked in there and I created this, such a beautiful send off. And he passed within an hour of that. My mindset after that was, you know, it's up and down, it's emotional, but my mindset routine is what got me through that hard process. And I gave him the funeral he wanted. And the moment we walked out of the church, the governor of California announced California was on lockdown. My mind envisioned, I visualized the funeral, what he was wearing, where he was going to be buried. I visualized everything to what he had told me in the past. He got exactly that. And I visualized that it was going to happen. There is just something powerful about what's in your mind's eye and making it become reality. Even if it has, you know, I'm talking about death. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, visualize that. So I'm very cautious of the words I speak, the thoughts I think. And I teach this in the 30 minutes about changing your vocabulary. Your vocabulary is so powerful. It's so important on each step. When you start to think up here, switch it, because it starts to come out here, or it starts to manifest in other areas of your body, your health, your well-being. And if you don't have your health, you don't have a foundation. And so there's so many people struggling with ailments or illnesses and cancer and diabetes and all of these things. It's start with your mindset and start to walk yourself back to what feels good, to what does eating right look like for you. Make those shifts. What does your fitness routine look like? Make those shifts, because, you know, it's not about being perfect. It's about taking the best care of yourself so you can live a very full, vivacious life. That is my goal. I look back at my mom, her life got cut short, most definitely. My dad lived a very full life. So I go back, and even though it was tragic, he had an amazing life. He made an impact. So ever since that moment, my goal in what I'm doing with the courses and writing books, my dad put a book in my hand as soon as I could read. I think I was probably 4 years old, and he always instilled like his boxes. I'm so lucky that I get to have his book. But never stop learning. That's another part of mindset. Like, always be evolving, always be learning, whether it's, you know, I love online courses. I have a library of them I create and that I take from other thought leaders out there. Like, that is my thing. On my spare time or in the car, I'm like listening to a course or learning something new. I also am a complete tech geek. So anything technology wise, I'm like deep into all of those because I implement that in my business. But there's so many things out there, and I have such this thirst, and that came from my dad. And so I feel in honoring him and his life and what he did, this is how I'm carrying on his legacy, is by continuing that. But it all starts from here. There was never, you know, I won't say never, but my dad was so positive and such an advocate for the underdog, if you will. He had so much knowledge and wisdom to share. And if you needed help, he was the first person to arrive. So that was passed on to me. So I want to be able to give these tools, and it starts with the foundation. The foundation is mindset.
My God, you know, I just like, you know, the thought that comes as you're sharing this is a like a mantra that I learned, you know, playing sports when I was young, which was practice like you play. And in everything that you're sharing, it's like you practice like you play, and then when you really are in the game, when you are in the hospital, when you are in the hospital with your dad, when you're in, you know, in with your mom, like you've practiced. And so what's accessible to you in that moment is the ability to be in the game, be in the moment, and not get swallowed by the moment. Is just what a beautiful testament to what to what it means to be persistent in your practices and to just honor coming back to them and over again. It's clearly served you, even with your son last night. I mean, I can imagine, you know, like it's just I don't know. It's kind of like, don't tell me, show me, and you are
Yeah.
showing us what it looks like. And I'm just so grateful for you sharing your stories with such honesty and rawness. And I feel like it's just been such an honoring of your parents in this conversation. It's so beautiful. I'm just
Yeah.
like, man, like, ah, man, I want to meet them, you know, like, but I feel like I have, you know,
Yeah.
with who you are and how you honor their legacy. It's just, and then on top of all of that, and I know we're at the top of the hour, and I want to be mindful of your time. On top of all of that, it's like, and your business is about building businesses and marketing, and it's like, and then mindfulness is like a part of that, but I'm just like, holy shit, we haven't even talked about,
I
right, this
know.
whole other part of who you are and your
Yeah.
superpowers, and I'm just like, just in awe,
Oh,
and I'm just so grateful for this conversation.
I am too. And you know, just quickly touching on that, the the businesses that I build, and my business is dedicated to building brands. You have to be an authority figure in what you're going to do.
Mm.
So we build that authority figure as your brand. And then we launch it into this multi-revenue, omni-channel is what it's called, business to create multiple streams of revenue. And I love men, but I only build for females. I only build brands and businesses for female entrepreneurs because my belief is, as women, money solves problems. And that's Alexa telling me to stretch my legs. Money solves problems, and women need to have their own lucrative revenue streams in order to go through this life. A husband, a spouse, a partner, a father, they're beautiful in the relationship, but they're not your meal ticket.
Mm.
Every single one of us needs to have our own revenue stream. We need to have our own means. We need to be able to make financial decisions on our own. And I think financial literacy for women is so, it's not talked about. It's not taught enough. It is just something that needs to be at the forefront. And I am not in the financial world, but I am just super passionate about seeing women make their own way in life with their own money, period. That's where I'll end that. I mean, that is like, I'm super passionate about it.
I'm into that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just, oh, you know, when we had our, you know, initial conversation and and you talked about your purpose in life, you know, um, and I'm just sitting here go, clearly your purpose is being of service to help others in their journey. You've been through so much, you've learned so much, and you just so freely give. And I thank you for that. And I'm wondering if there's anything that you just feel compelled that you want to share in this moment that we didn't cover that you want people to know that's coming up for you.
Um, I'm like, oh my gosh. I think, you know, if any of what I shared resonated and anybody has one pain point or struggle, I wrote my first book is called Behind the Grit, and it's my story of my personal life and my business weaved in all of the lessons. And it's gritty. It's very gritty. I go into great detail. But what I didn't want the book to be storytelling. I wanted to be solution oriented.
Mm.
So I give the problem and I present it in a storytelling. I try to inject a lot of humor in it to make it lighthearted, but I give you a solution at the end of every chapter. So if you are encountering anything similar to this, and I give of things that went really wrong, like really bad, really wrong, and how you walk yourself out of it. And then I give you options of solutions. So it's like, okay, if I ever got myself in that, these are the first steps. And I'll be honest with you. I actually used one of the chapters in real life with a scenario with one of my son's friends who was in a very physically abusive scenario. And I walked her through it on a phone. She was trembling. She didn't know what to do. And I said, okay, step 1, write it down. Go and do that. Call me back. Step 2, we got her to safety. We got a restraining order against the person that was abusing her. They actually ended up in jail. The cops showed up because there was enough proof. And something like that is extreme, but it was life-saving for her.
Wow.
That was all I needed to know, that I need to share my message. And I said, here are the solutions. I then received a phone call from her mom in tears. She said, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to tell my daughter. And right there, I'm like, okay, been there, done that, lived it. Let me tell you what works and what doesn't work, when you need to call the authorities, when you need to do this. And at that moment, I said, I'm sharing all the nitty gritty, the dirty, the bad, the ugly. I'm sharing it because it's going to help somebody. And this young lady, she's in her early 20s. And so, yeah, I just shipped her a very appropriate Christmas present to keep her safe. But it's hard hearing some of those stories out there. So if you know that you've walked before them, you're doing a disservice by not sharing what the solution was. If you were able to already be on the other side of it, which I am on the other side of these stories. So that's why I wrote the book. So it's called Behind the Grit. It's on my website. And it literally is 15 solutions on some crazy scenarios in life that has happened to me personally.
Wow, what a beautiful gift. And I'm like, I wish you the most success with that book, your second book, your business, with
Thank you.
with being joyful in life and just continuing to thrive. I'm wishing you such a, a holiday that gives you exactly what you need. I hope that
Thank you.
you get what you need. And listen, if your son needs anything, I think we're nearby. Happy to drop something off.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you.
Let me know. You text me.
Thank you.
Whatever you need.
I will. I'll text you. He's actually right around the corner from you.
I figured, let me know if you want me to drop something surprise off for him. Happy to do that.
Oh, you're so kind. I know he, when he checked in, he ran into 3 friends that are also staying there in quarantine at check-in because their significant others are all at home with COVID. So I'm like, okay,
you've got some other people then.
What an interesting time, right? I'm like, Christmas week, this happens. I'm like, go figure. So
crazy.
Yeah. We make the best of it.
Yeah. Well, thank you again so much for your time
and
for sharing. And wow, what a gift this has been. And I look forward to hopefully more conversations with you.
Likewise, me too. I will have you over on my IGTV next year, which is very soon.
That would be amazing.
Yes, I appreciate it. I wish you such a wonderful week, and I hope you have a peaceful week.
Thank you so much. Yes, and you're getting lots of love here.
I love it.
An oceanic wave of love. Happy winter solstice. Yes, indeed. Happy solstice.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Tosca. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Monica. Be well. Be safe. Talk soon.
Thank you. Talk soon. Bye.
All right. Ciao.